everybody, to another exciting episode of Multiplayer, the podcast by gamers for gamers. I am your host, Zach Matscanis, alongside the lover boy himself, Javier Ortiz.
Yo, what's up?
Yo. What you got over there? That Winston picture?
Yeah, the one I got you and I also got for myself. So
what does yours say?
Mine
said "get good."
Yeah. I had Crispin Freeman write that. I just wrote to him, to Javier with love. So he just said to Javier with love.
All right.
He's a cool guy, that Crispin Freeman.
Oh yeah, I mean the fact that he would just in writing talk trash about me is fantastic.
Pretty much.
Thank you, Crispin Freeman, voice of Winston in Overwatch, for talking trash about me. Every time I just hear Winston in that game now, I just think like, that man talked trash about me.
Yes, he did. Gives you a little motivation.
Now I throw every match. I don't even try anymore. I'm upset. Remember, everybody, that Multiplayer is all over the place, in your ears and in your face. You can find us over at YouTube at youtube.com/multiplayer, where you can see our ugly mugs. You can see Hov's picture of Winston over there.
Yeah.
Not in its frame. I have the frame here at my house. We need to meet up so I can give you this frame.
I really like
that. Of course, if you want to hear the audio version of me explaining that Hob needs to get this frame, go and check us out on podcast services everywhere. Just pick a podcast service, whatever you like. If you're just like, I like iTunes. I got an iPhone and I like the podcast.
I listen on Pandora.
I got the Pandoras going, and I want to listen to the Multiplayer. And you could just look up Multiplayer. Don't forget that ED on the end, and you will hear our beautiful voices as we serenade you with stupid video game talk.
Baby.
Oh, baby. Wow. And of course, you can find us over on Patreon as well if you like what we do. Check us out at patreon.com/multiplayer, and of course, you can find us on Instagram, where we post pictures over at Go Multiplayer. We like to have a little fun over there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Speaking of fun, oh boy, Hav, I'm tired.
I feel you, dog. It's we're recording this one a little later than usual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel you.
We're normally like a wake up at the crack of noon kind of guys, and then we record an episode of Multiplayer. But today we're doing this late in the evening, when Grandpa Zach has to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So apologies if we're gonna see how this episode goes, and this is a meaty episode too. It's very meaty. I just want to keep saying meaty.
Meaty. I made meatloaf yesterday.
Episode.
If that, yeah, it was pretty good.
just a regular beef meatloaf situation.
I mean, I don't know what a typical meatloaf entails, but I mean, it tasted good. Spices, onion, garlic, ketchup, sauce.
Yeah, because you could do like a turkey meatloaf,
No, this was beef, baby. It's all beef.
Oh yeah, that beef baby meatloaf.
It was a beef baby.
But yeah, we have a very meaty meatloaf, just a loaf of like information dump that we're gonna try and get through here. And in my tired state, we'll see how it goes. So apologies in advance if I am a terrible host today. But so basically we're gonna talk about a Bloomberg report about Sony, like a big old fat one that just came out, and there's a lot to it to unpack. And I just want to kind of roll with it today. So it might be a little like less structured of a show than typical,
Sure.
But I hope everybody kind of sticks with us as we get through this, because I think there's some like really interesting stuff in there. Myself and Hav, I think I can speak for you as well, where it's like the kind of the inner workings of like some of these video game companies are just fascinating.
Sure.
And it's like
a lot of levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people kind of on the surface level. If there's something they hate about, like, let's say, like, they didn't like The Last of Us 2 or something like that, which, shame on you, first of all. But, if you don't like a game like that, you just go to, like, Sony's, like, Twitter, and it's just like, F you! And it's just like, all right, job done. It's just like, all right, well, that's the social media team. They literally have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes for like, you know, every layer of like a giant corporation. There's like so much to it. And a lot of it's like overly complicated because there's just so many cogs that need to turn certain ways for the machine to work. And a lot of them are disconnected in a lot of different ways. And so it's just kind of interesting how these companies sort of go about the things that they do. So I want to kind of dig into this Bloomberg report, and then afterwards I want to get into weird video game consoles. So, you know, it'll be kind of a palate cleanser from this beefy meatloaf of a Bloomberg article, and then you know, if we got some time, we'll do a little You Nintendo Don't Know Jack.
Yeah.
Which you got to redeem yourself for last week. You really
that was a tough
screwed the pooch on that one.
That was a tough one.
I gave you some toughy. So I got one toughie in the bunch this week. Although I think you could still figure that one out, and then 2 like medium toughies.
That's all right. I'm gonna go 3 for 3 this time.
You better, or else you're off the show. That's how we do here over at Multiplayer. And then it's just gonna be me talking to myself for an hour. So we have a lot to get into. So let's just jump into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Bloomberg. Actually, you know, before we start this, I gotta say, props to Bloomberg. They have been crushing it when it comes to like video game reporting.
Oh yeah.
Over the past like, I'd say year-ish. Like, you know, obviously Bloomberg is like that's a huge media source that they
cover like
about
real
everything.
news.
Yeah, they cover everything. They're like real news.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like global pandemics and like terrible things going on in the world, and then there's just like video games ? And then it's like a lot of places, you know, I'll read video game articles on things like NBC, and it's just like, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing over there. It's just like, you know, Timmy the intern, you know, just taking a crack at like a video game article or something over there. But Bloomberg, man, they not only do they is their reporting great, it's just like so in depth and so like, man, there's just layers to the stuff where it's like a big onion that you're reading, where it's just like
it's like an ogre.
I'm getting into all the food stuff this week. I guess I'm still hungry.
I was gonna say, I think you're hungry. It's like a cake, you know, with lots of layers and cake and chocolate.
You know, like chocolate, custard. And,
oh man,
icing.
Ice cream cake is really good.
That it is. But yeah, so Bloomberg came out with this article basically titled "Sony's Obsession with Blockbusters is Stirring Unrest Within PlayStation Empire."
It's a good headline.
It's a good headline, and it really just like it really sums up what this is trying to get at. And like I said, this is a huge article. So if you have the time, please like go and take a look at this yourself, dear listeners and watchers of the YouTube.
Put the link of it in the description for this episode. Yeah,
I should do that. Yeah, don't tell me what to do.
Okay, it was more of a suggestion. You know,
I'm just kidding. So, so basically, I'm gonna kind of start reading a little bit of this, and we could take a couple breaks, Hav, and sort of talk about what some of this, is trying to say and how we feel about it. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, here we go. So from Bloomberg, Mr. Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, he wrote this beautiful article. Here we go. Quote, Sony Corp's Visual Arts Service Group has long been the unsung hero of many hit PlayStation video games. The San Diego-based operation helps finish off games designed at other Sony-owned studios with animation, art, or other content and development. But about 3 years ago, a handful of influential figures within the Visual Arts Service Group decided they wanted to have more creative control and lead game direction rather than being supporting actors on popular titles such as Spider-Man and Uncharted. Michael Mumbauer, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
That sounds right.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So Michael Mumbauer, who took over direction of the Visual Arts Service Group in 2007, recruited a group of about 30 developers internally and from neighboring game studios to form a new development unit within Sony. The idea was to expand upon some of the company's most successful franchises, and the team began working on a remake of the 2013 hit The Last of Us for the PlayStation 5. But Sony never fully acknowledged the team's existence or gave them the funding and support needed to succeed in the highly competitive video game market, according to people involved. The studio never even got its own name. Instead, Sony moved ownership of The Last of Us remake to its original creator, Naughty Dog, a Sony-owned studio behind many of the company's best-selling games. And I'll stop right there. So already there's a lot to unpack. So, you have this group, Sony Corp's Visual Arts Service Group. Well,
Yeah.
First of all, like, what a name. Like,
Yeah.
like if that's like generic brand,
Oh, sure.
like sugar grape drink, or
Yeah. It is. It's super. This sounds like this is a team where it's like whatever they need help finishing, you do that. You're just gonna kind of be like the night shifts crew. Like you just kind of finish what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's like, we don't really, like, you're working in the shadows. You don't get a real name.
You don't have a name.
It's like Sony basically at this point, they have like a couple golden geese in the stable. I don't know. Do you put geese in a stable? I don't even know.
When you're fancy, sure.
A stable of geese.
It's a golden stable of geese.
And obviously that's like Naughty Dog, that's Guerrilla Games, that's
Santa Monica Studios, Insomniac.
Yeah, Santa Monica. Yeah. So those guys, that's kind of their flock of geese. And everybody else, it's like they're kind of either pushed to the side or don't get like sort of the appreciation that maybe they deserve,
Sure.
or like the recognition is probably the better word to use there. Recognition they deserve. And this group of like they got to be really talented people, because like they're working on games like The Last of Us, even if it's like finishing work. That's
it's huge. Yeah.
Like The Last of Us Part 2 is no joke.
Yeah.
And games like Spider-Man, no joke. Uncharted, no joke. Those are like huge games. So this group coming in and polishing things up, those guys are good at their job. And but they, like I said, they never even got like a real name over there. They're just Sony Corp's Visual Arts Service Group.
Yeah, it's like you're a small team that is hoping to do your own thing at Sony, and instead of them letting you do your thing, they're like, well, we know that this big AAA studio, Naughty Dog, is going to do something great, so you're just kind of get absorbed into them, and you're just going to do what they say. And that's kind of like what it sounds like is going on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, basically what it seems like is like, last few years they've been kind of crushing it as far as like a polishing team. And this guy, Michael Mumbauer, he kind of took over a direction in 2007. And he's like, all right, I'm going to recruit this group, and, we're going to pitch a new idea. And even if that's a remake, it's like, that's our baby. We can like take that and make it incredible and make Sony acknowledge us.
Yep.
And so, they basically they decided to go with this like Last of Us remake, and kind of just got pushed aside. They essentially they were working on it for a little bit, and then they're like, yeah, Naughty Dog's gonna take this over.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of a bummer. It's like these guys who are trying to sort of make a name for themselves, and they didn't get the chance.
Yeah, it's like it's Sony. It's kind of like that old mentality of like, I'm fresh out of school, and when I look at job applications, it says you need this much experience to get in. It's like, well, I was doing school, so how am I going to get the chance to do it? It's sort of similar to this, where it's like we're a small team, and it's like, cool, we're owned by Sony, and like maybe we can have our chance to do something great. Like even if it's a small indie title, let's show that we're capable of doing something. And instead, they're just like, you're gonna just be absorbed into what we know is gonna work, and you're just gonna take orders from them because we know this is a proven commodity. So we don't need to take a chance with your creative vision.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to this little part of the article, quote, deflated, the small group's leadership has largely disbanded, according to interviews with 8 people familiar with the operation. Many included Mumbauer have left the company entirely. Mumbauer declined to comment, and others asked not to be named, discussing private information. A representative for Sony declined to comment or provide interviews. So it's just, they're just like, all right, well, I guess I'm just dipping out because you guys clearly don't care.
It's interesting too because it's like, it seems as if nowadays, especially with Sony, is that if your next game isn't like a groundbreaking 10 out of 10, wow, this like blew us out of the water. If it's not that, it's almost like a bust, you know? Like we kind of talked about that in 2018 when God of War came out and Spider-Man came out. We were like, wow, Sony like just knocked it out the park. Like, what's next? Like they're and 2019, I don't want to say it was a dip but it kind of was in comparison to 2018 because I think that was Death Stranding and I think Days Gone as well. And both of those games are mixed, right? It's just like, let's be honest, they have mixed reviews and not everybody likes them. Mm-hmm. Like Death Stranding is very divided, and Days Gone, I think, is a general feeling of like, it's okay, but it's definitely not The Last of Us, and that's way better of a zombie game. Like if I'm going to play a zombie game, I'm going to play Last of Us. I'm not going to play Days Gone. So it seems like with that mentality, it's like, okay, it's either a home run or it's a bust, and there's no middle ground, which I think is kind of, you're shooting yourself in the foot almost, right? Because that's putting way too much pressure on your resources, and instead of having teams like this, what was it called, Visual Art Service Group, instead of having them making something smaller, like, hey, we're not gonna make Uncharted 5, but we've got this really cool idea, and it's not gonna be that expensive. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be really good. And we promise you it's going to be a good game. It's not going to be a huge, it's not going to be Avengers Endgame, but it's going to be a nice indie flick that'll, a lot of people appreciate, and it seems like Sony has the mentality of like, no, if it's not a blockbuster, if it's not huge, if it's not the next groundbreaking narrative story game, then we can't take a chance on it, which I think it's silly.
Yeah, which kind of brings me into this is actually kind of off script already with what I had in the show, but like I said, this episode's a little looser.
Sure.
So this kind of goes into Sony Bend a little bit, and I thought this was interesting. So, quote: "This fixation on teams that churn out hits is creating unrest across Sony's portfolio of game studios. Oregon-based Sony Bend, best known for 2019 open-world action game Days Gone, tried unsuccessfully to pitch a sequel that year. According to people familiar with the proposal, although the first game had been profitable, its development had been lengthy and critical reception was mixed, kind of like what you were saying, Hob.
Yeah.
So a Days Gone 2 wasn't seen as a viable option. Instead, one team at the studio was assigned to help Naughty Dog, Golden Goose, with a multiplayer game, while a second group was assigned to work on a new Uncharted game with supervision from Naughty Dog. Some staff, including top leads, were unhappy with this arrangement and left. Bend's developers feared they might be absorbed into Naughty Dog, and the studio's leadership asked to be taken off the Uncharted project. They got their wish last month and are now working on a new game of their own that will be part of a brand new franchise. So it's just like
what's interesting about that, and I want to ask what you think about this.
Sure.
To me, when it comes to a lot of these decisions, when it comes down to it, this is a company, and a company's trying to make money, right? So it's interesting. What's interesting about that little segment that you read was that even though the first game had been profitable, its development had been too long and critical reception was missed. So that's why they didn't greenlight a Days Gone 2. But it's interesting because it says it was profitable. This game turned a profit. So to me, this is like, usually studios are heartless and they're just like, money, sequel,
Yeah.
you know? But this time it seems like you made money, but no. And they're alluding to maybe it's because of either the development cycle or because of mixed reviews. But either way, it made money. So what do you think about? Because usually to me it's always all roads lead back to money. But if this one doesn't necessarily seem to do that. Maybe it's because of the development cycle's too long.
Yeah, I think it's a few different things, and I could be. This is all speculation, by the way. I'm a big old idiot.
Oh yeah, we're not experts.
But this is kind of like if I was like Frank Sony,
yep,
head of Sony, this would kind of be my thought on it. Where it seems like lately, Sony's really been tripling down on the AAA, obviously.
Yeah.
But also they're looking at ways to take their properties and expand them into like movies, TV shows, and stuff like that as well. So it's one of these things where it's like, not only do their games have to be like 10 out of 10 like masterpieces, it also like it needs to generate enough buzz around it that like it can be made into something like a TV show, like an HBO Last of Us show.
Right.
I mean, Sony's like probably making bank on that, like HBO money, dog.
Yeah,
that's
like, true. That's very true.
So not only are they making Last of Us,
Uncharted
Last of Us
movie,
2, Uncharted movie, I think it's coming out in like a couple months. So it's one of those things where you have this way of like making more money off the same property without. I don't want to say without much more effort, because obviously it's more effort, but it's somebody can like take that on the movie side of things and run with it, so it's like a different division taking the same property that's well known and doing something else with it. It's kind of the same thing with like Marvel. It's like, yeah, you have these like memorable characters and these great stories from the comics, and now somebody else can run with it and make a TV show and a movie and all these things where it's like,
right,
it can be profitable in different departments. I feel like Days Gone was in this weird spot where it got mixed reviews, but also like you already have a post-apocalyptic zombie thing with a scruffy looking white guy. It's like
true. That's very true.
You already got it. It's, and I to be completely frank and honest, I don't know why Sony greenlit the first Days Gone, because like if somebody pitched that idea where it's like, we have an idea for basically a post-apocalyptic zombie game, and it stars a scruffy grizzled white man. I'd be like,
right,
get out of here. Like,
yes,
we did that. Literally, we did that like 5 years ago. Like, pitch something else. I understand it's kind of it's a different game as far as mechanics. Like, it's an open world.
You got a motorcycle.
You have a motorcycle. You're fighting hordes.
Yeah.
So it's like, technically, it's a different game with different game mechanics. But it's like, if you were to turn that into a TV show, like another HBO TV show, you would be like, this stuff's too similar. It's like, you got these two zombie worlds featuring a scruffy white guy fighting zombies, and clickers, freakers.
Yeah.
And second of all, freakers is a stupid name. but it's one of those things where it's like, I could kind of understand from a very, very top level, like Frank Sony was looking at this, and it's like, okay, so it got mixed reviews. It took too long to make. We have something similar, and we're going to do a remake of the original game, and we're about to come out with an HBO show of that. Make something that's not like The Last of Us,
right,
that like doesn't even feel like The Last of Us. So that's kind of how I see it. I could be totally wrong, and I'm totally just speculating, but that's how, like, if I was Frank Sony, that's what I would be looking at. Now, if it came out and it was like a 10 out of 10 game, just crushing the charts, then I think they would look at it differently. It's like, well, there's enough room for two games with scruffy white guys fighting zombies.
Yeah, we can have multiple zombie worlds. Why not?
It's but it's one of those things where it's like, it didn't do enough. So as far as like moving the needle
Right.
for anybody to care. Now, it's one of those things that is a bummer because a lot of times a second game in a video game series is better than the first. It's like look at like Uncharted 2 compared to Uncharted 1.
Sure.
Is like a perfect example. It's like if you stopped making Uncharted after Uncharted 1, that would have been a huge mistake because like that game changed a lot.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
like, I mean, Uncharted 2 is absolutely incredible. So it's like, who knows? Like Days Gone 2 could have just blown everybody's minds, I mean, Sony Ben's a great company, they could, a great studio. They could, probably churn out something amazing with a second chance. And a lot of times because, in today's world with a game like Days Gone, basically all the assets are there. So all you have to do is make a new world, or excuse me, not make a new game with like a new story, maybe a couple of new characters, and like polish some things up. But like the world's built, the world's
Sure.
kind of designed.
Yeah, you've got your
figured
blueprint
out,
down.
like, yeah, exactly. Like you figured out what you want to be, and now you can just double down and make it fantastic. And that was kind of what Uncharted did,
Yeah.
and a lot of games like it.
Sure.
Where
Like Arkham City. I mean, Arkham City is just like, to me, it's like the perfect sequel. First one's great.
That's a great example.
Second one's just, it's perfect. It's you expanded your world, you improved how you travel that world, your combat's better, you've got more interesting fights. I mean, it's just, I understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about it. So kind of moving on, unless you had something else to add there.
No, it just made me think about like like From Software, the guys that did Bloodborne, like when's that gonna happen? that's what I was thinking about.
Well, who knows? Because like, you know what? I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna kind of go on to this next thing here. So like, who knows? Because the thing with Bloodborne is Sony Japan really helped out with that project.
We talked about
and
this. Like, weren't we talking about Sony Japan like a few? I forget what. We talked about it in a previous episode where like they're trying to like lessen the influence of Japanese developer and move more like stateside.
Yeah. So exactly. So we spoke about this a few weeks ago with like. There'd been like rumors about Sony Japan kind of being gutted, and now that stuff's definitely true. Like it happened, and Blueborg. do you like Big Bag Beetleborg? Blueborg. Deep cut. So where was I? Oh yeah. So basically that happened, the stuff with Sony Japan. So here's a little part from the same article. Quote, Sony's focus on exclusive blockbusters has come at the expense of niche teams and studios within PlayStation organization, leading to high turnover and less choice for players. Last week, Sony reorganized a development office in Japan, resulting in mass departures of people who worked on less well-known but acclaimed games such as Gravity Rush and Everybody's Golf. The company has informed developers that it no longer wants to produce smaller games that are only successful in Japan. So
that's nuts.
And just to kind of add to that, because the article doesn't really say it, but essentially, Sony Japan's kind of been gutted and has basically been reduced to a Asobi team. And Asobi team, they're the makers of Astrobot and Astro's Playroom and all that. So that's basically Sony Japan now, is just a Asobi team.
It's nuts, man. It's crazy. It really is. It's like, I guess it's a mix of what we were both saying. If it's not a home run, and if it's not something that we can market for either television or movie, then we're not going to greenlight it. It's what it seems like. It's like, because especially if like, it's just a shame. It's crazy. A Japanese company is making their Japanese side of the team. It's just
Isn't
like,
that crazy?
Yeah, they're just like, nope. You guys we're gutting this part and we're focusing on our stateside developers because they're the ones that are making the most money. Or stateside and Canadian, I think one of them's Canadian.
For what?
Sucker Punch, I think. they Canadian?
Oh
They
yeah,
Vancouver?
I think Sucker Punch is Vancouver.
Yeah. So technically, I mean, still sort of like stateside, North America.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's North America.
Yeah. So it's nuts. A Japanese-owned company is just kind of like almost turning their back on an entire side of their company. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something like a few months ago. I kind of I was saying this. I remember an episode we did. It had at least Joe on. I can't remember if that other jabroni was on.
Kahan.
I'm just kidding, Kahan. I love you, buddy. Yeah, I was kind of saying this a few months ago, where it's just like, you got to look at the numbers, and it's one of those things where it's like Japan is like a small country compared to like the United States and, kind of Europe combined. And the taste of like, I guess I'll call it like Western European and, kind of North America interest. It kind of sort of lies in these like big AAA, third person kind of action.
Yeah.
Games,
Narrative driven.
Yeah. It's what sells consoles. It's, and that's kind of what I was saying a few months ago too. It's like basically Sony's in this place where it's like the way they sell consoles is like they just want something really, really shiny to like stick in front of like football games and I mean pick like a big popular thing,
Sure.
And they just want to stick a shiny commercial in front. Be like The Last of Us 3.
Yeah.
And it just looks stunning. And it's like, yo, I need a PS5. And that's kind of their thing. Same thing with like Spider-Man, like all these huge blockbusters where it's and it's kind of the same way, like if you think, I mean, movie theaters are kind of semi-dead at the moment, but you got to think about like when movie theaters come back, or like a couple years ago, where it's like, a lot of people don't go to the movie theaters to watch like what's a ridiculous movie? Hitch. Like nobody's going to the movies anymore to watch Hitch. They wait for it to be on Netflix.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's like you go to the movies to watch Marvel's Avengers 12, featuring Galactus. Which I hope they make.
That'd be awesome.
It's just like the way people are now, where it's just like.
It has to be like a spectacle, not necessarily the story or entertainment. It's more about like the spectacle of it.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where once you're there, maybe you'll pick up some of those smaller titles that are like artsy fartsy creative types, indie games, things that are a little smaller, a little more in the weeds as far as like just something different.
Right.
But you buy the console for like something that blows your mind, and this actually happened to me. Like how I got into PlayStation, I was an advocate for like like PlayStation hate back in the day. Like, PS1, PS2, I was like trash. Especially like the PS1 had some decent games. And I enjoyed my time with my PS1, but when the PS2 came out, I was like, this is a garbage system. It had good games. I'll give it like GTA 3 and
Kingdom Hearts.
Definitely not Kingdom. That was one of the reasons I was like, absolutely not this crap system. But I just on a fundamental level of like, design, I was like, this system is real booty. And but when the PS3 came out, and I saw Metal Gear Solid 4 for the first time, I went to a buddy's house and he was like, check out this game. And I had never played a Metal Gear game, but I saw that game running and I was like stunned. I was literally stunned by that game. And I went out that day and bought a PS3 for like $600 because it was just like, I can't say anything. This is literally the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. At the time, it was like that game. To this day, that game still looks beautiful. So, like at the time, it was just utterly insane.
Sure.
What I was witnessing with my eyeballs. And I bought a PS3 and I literally played through every single Metal Gear Solid game. So it's like that's what they're banking on. It's just people where they see like The Last of Us 3 or Uncharted 6 or whatever. We're on 5.
It'll be 5.
Would be the next one.
The next one will be 5. Well,
I'm
I
sure
guess
they'll.
technically 6. No.
Oh yeah,
Do
I
you
guess
do you count the PSP game? There's a PS.
7.
I mean, so that would be 7. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna rename it
probably.
Uncharted something, colon something. But
Yeah.
anyways, so that's kind of what they're banking on now is just these AAA games, and then like you stick around and you play like the like the third party games, like the Assassin's Creeds, the
Right.
NBA 2K, whatever, the Call of Duties. It's like they're just banking on you picking that stuff up after you've been floored by Spider-Man,
Right.
2 or whatever. So it's like it kind of makes sense, but man, it's a bummer for especially the Japanese side. Like, what a bummer to lose some of those people. Like, Gravity Rush is such like a fascinating, interesting world that I would have loved to have seen a Gravity Rush 3 on PS5 with like all the power of that system and give it the AAA stamp, like, all right, go crazy, here's a blank check, do what you need to do. I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
And same thing with like the team behind things like Shadow of the Colossus and stuff. I would have loved to have seen what they have done, with whatever their next weird game would have been.
Sure. I just hope they didn't completely gut the From Software team. I mean, if you're gonna keep something,
well, From Software, that's basically it's like from Software. Obviously, they're like their own team. They're not associated with Sony, but like part of Sony Japan was helping them develop.
That's what I mean. It's like
Bloodborne.
don't like shoot yourself in the foot. That's what I mean by that. Like if you're gonna, because I love Bloodborne. I mean, for those who haven't played it, it's fantastic. It's just better Dark Souls. Like it is. I'm sorry, it is. It just it has a fantastic look. The acting's really interesting, and like the gameplay is just perfect. Like, and it's such a fun game to go in and out of, and to take away a team's resources to make a sequel to that, to me, would just be, again, it's just shooting yourself in the foot, and it's contradictory to what you're trying to accomplish, which is just making great games, and that is a great game. So I mean, I just I just don't want, and I'm sure much smarter people than me are in charge, so I'm sure they're not doing that. But it just seems like the way they're structuring everything, it's like, I don't know, it's just scary to think about like not being able to help make another great game.
Yeah, and kind of speak. Man, this has been flowing great. Like, we can just jump from one thing to the next. So something else I wanted to kind of touch on here is there's another part of this article that kind of gets into like Sony sort of like shunning some of their smaller teams and smaller games. So here's another part of that Bloomberg article, quote, emphasizing big hits can also be counterproductive because sometimes games that start small can turn into massive successes. In 2020, Sony didn't put much marketing muscle behind the quirky video game system Dreams by the PlayStation-owned Media Molecule in the UK. As a result, PlayStation may have missed out on its own version of Roblox, a similar video game tool. Parent company Roblox Corp went public earlier this year and is now valued at $45 billion.
It's a lot of money.
So it's just, so, and that's just kind of to give you a comparison of like, if they had just put like the money behind Dreams and like really showed that game off, I mean, I don't know where you advertise that. Definitely not during like a football game. Sorry, football fans.
I mean,
but it's like
YouTube ads.
It's, I mean, YouTube ads, like, target like the people that are looking up, like Adobe, tutorials. I don't know. There's like, I mean, first of all, make that game free. Stick it on like PlayStation Plus, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, let that thing just like live. I played a little bit of Dreams, and to be quite honest, it's not necessarily for me, but I enjoyed my time kind of fiddling with it a little bit. And there's a ton of artists out there that could just do so many creative things with that if given the chance.
Right.
And also, just put that game on PC, for the love of God. That's a PC game through and through. The fact that it's not on there yet is insane. I'm sure it's coming soon.
Sure.
Because it would be silly
Yeah.
and stupid if they
It's
didn't.
like
But
meant for PC.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, just the controls, and I mean, it's a very like elaborate system,
Yeah.
and they do a really good job of mapping it to a controller, but it's a PC game,
Sure.
and that's okay. um, so I'm gonna kind of keep rolling, unless you had something else you wanted to kind of add to that.
No, it's nuts to think of like you had I don't want to say you had a $45 billion thing attached to you, but it's interesting that their marketing is so very picky, almost, is the word I guess that would best associate it. It's like it's only, does it have explosions? Will the Americans like it? Yeah, then we probably shouldn't market it that much. That's what it seems like it comes down to, honestly.
Yeah, pretty much. And I've read a few articles that kind of like add on top of that. What Bloomberg's trying to say with this article with ad dollars behind Dreams. I will say, like, I think Roblox is a little different. I do think Dreams is a little more niche, and I'm honestly shocked Sony let them develop that game for as long as they did. Like, it took them like 8 years to make that game. And it's just like, I'm sure by the time they release it, they're like, we can't put any money behind this thing.
Or anymore.
It's just taking too long. Yeah. It's, so, I, just to play devil's advocate, like, I can understand why Sony, like, didn't put much money behind it after it released. And, I'm honestly a little scared for Media Molecule, because it's like they haven't had a hit since, like a huge hit since the original, like, Sackboy. It's or excuse me, Little Big Planet, not Sackboy. Sackboy's the character.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I understand what you're talking about.
So, but I think they did 1 and 2, Little Big Planet 1 and 2, and then it moved on to a different company. But yeah, it's like they haven't had a hit in a very long time. So I'm honestly a little scared for that company. I wouldn't be shocked if this year we heard that they were
get absorbed into Santa Monica Studios.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody move on to Naughty Dog, and I'm gonna wrap up this Bloomberg with this last little bit, and this is actually circling back all the way back to Mumbauer and his team over at Sony Corp's Visual Arts Service Group. What a fantastic name! Oh my goodness! I mean, I could just fall asleep reading that name.
These are Honey Nut Generios.
So this is from Bloomberg again. Quote, for the first solo, and like I said, this is talking about that group again, the Visual Arts Service Group. For their first solo project, Mumbauer and his crew wanted to pitch something that would be well received by their bosses at Sony. Recognizing the risks and expense involved with developing a new game from scratch, they decided to focus on remaking older games for the new PlayStation 5. Remakes are considered a safe bet, since it's cheaper to update and polish an old game than it is to start from scratch. And they can be sold both to nostalgic old fans and curious new ones. The team originally planned on a remake for the first Uncharted game, released by Naughty Dog in 2007. That idea quickly fizzled because it would be expensive and require too much added design work. Instead, the team settled on a remake of Naughty Dog's 2013 zombie hit The Last of Us. At the time, Naughty Dog was in the thick of development on the sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, which would introduce higher fidelity graphics and new gameplay features. If Mumbauer's crew remade the first game to have a similar look and feel, the two games could be packaged together for the PlayStation 5. In theory, this would be a less expensive proposition than remaking Uncharted, since The Last of Us was more modern and wouldn't require too many gameplay overhauls. Then, once Mumbauer's group had established itself, it could go on to remake the first Uncharted and other titles down the road, but pivoting from doing finishing work from other games to making your own is difficult. Blah blah blah. Basically, it's really expensive to just start from scratch on something. They're a finishing team.
Yeah.
Let's see here if there was anything else I wanted to add. So Mumbauer's project, codenamed T1X was approved on a probationary basis, but Sony kept the team's existence a secret and refused to give them a budget to hire more people, leading many to wonder if the company was really committed to letting the team build a new studio. Still, the small team kept working, and by the spring of 2019, they had completed a section of the game designed to showcase how the rest would look and feel. And at the time, Sony was going through a management shuffle, and the new boss wasn't impressed. And, kind of, actually, I'll kind of throw this in here too because it's interesting. Herman Hulst, the former head of Guerrilla Games, was named head of PlayStation's worldwide studios in November 2019. He thought the remake project was too expensive, according to people familiar with the matter, and asked why the planned budget for T1X was so much higher. And blah, blah, blah. Like, basically, it's like, yo, we're starting from scratch. We're a small team of 30. We need to build up. And essentially, they're like, nah, forget it. This is me talking, not Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Nah, forget it. And then they moved the project over to Naughty Dog proper. And, that's kind of the gist of it. There's a lot more. Please read the article, dear listeners and viewers. But that's kind of the gist. And it's like, man, it's I think that was like kind of a safe bet for them where, the Sony Course Visual Arts Service Group, where they're like, we'll make these remakes. That's a safe bet. Let's start with The Last of Us. And then, if that goes well, we'll move on to Uncharted 1. And eventually Sony was just like, no, we could just save money if we just give it to Naughty Dog. And it's just like, and that team just kind of, Mumbauer's team just kind of crumbled, and it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it's that attitude of like, yeah, but this team's already done something great, so let's just have them in charge and do everything, and let's follow their idea.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it is. Like I said, it's the hen, the goose, the golden goose crew. Naughty Dog leading the goose pack. It's
geese fly together.
Yeah, but in that V, and Naughty Dog's in the front.
Yeah,
and so they're just like, just give it to Naughty Dog. We'll save some money, and we don't need to waste time with you. And it's just like, it's kind of a bummer. We could kind of talk about this forever, and I don't necessarily want to do that. I think everybody kind of gets the gist of this. Hopefully, if you're confused, go read the article some more. But there's some good stuff in there. There's two things I want to get to before we kind of run out of time with this section. We're already over a little bit. First off, do you even want a Last of Us remake?
Well, they did. They already did it. The HD remake.
That was a remaster,
yeah, that was,
but a full-on remake.
No, a full-on remake? No, absolutely not. Like that. You know what made Naughty Dog so great is that they made Crash Bandicoot. And you know what made them great again? They made Uncharted. And you know what made them great again? They made Last of Us. It's 3 completely different games. They're completely different. So why no? Promote your new idea from your teams that you trust. Like, let them do their job, be creatives, and make something new and awesome. Like, that's why I've always loved Sony games and Sony exclusives, because they're different. Yeah. They're their own creation, and they're cool stories. And that's why Naughty Dog's been awesome. And that's why, because who would have thought, like, if I were to talk to like a 15-year-old kid nowadays and be like, "Do you like Last of Us?" You know who made that? The guys who made Crash Bandicoot, or like that company. They're like, what?
And they're like, what is Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah, exactly. But like that
you goddamn kid,
you dumb 15-year-old talking like a baby. But like that's why they're so great. It's like you went from something like that to The Last of Us, Part 2, to Uncharted. Like that's significant. That's your company telling your teams, you know what? We believe in what you're doing. You have a track record. You want to do something new? Go for it. Because we believe you, and we know that you're going to do a good job. It's like, that's like saying, hey, you know how you made 6 God of War games and they're all like that? Well, what if we take all of that and we push it aside and we do this instead, and we make it completely different? Because the new God of War game is a completely different game. It's nothing like the originals. It's not in any way. Like the gameplay mechanics, the storytelling, like it's all different, and and it takes guts to approve something like that. But when it pays off, it's like, wow, that's fantastic. So yeah, I don't want a remake. I want you to do something new. Because I feel like that story's been told, and I don't need to hear another story from that world. I really don't, because the story I was told already is perfect. I don't I don't need any more from it. And frankly, I don't want to go back to that world. It's sad.
It's real sad. I mean, let me see what Last of Us 3 and end it right there. I don't care if I see that like 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Give me that, but I don't like the original Last of Us is a masterpiece in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't need.
Absolutely not.
It's fantastic.
Don't need. That'd be ridiculous. It's like, hey, here's this same world, but here's different people and different story. It's like, I don't need it though. You already told me a perfect story. I don't need it.
Yeah, it's only been 8 years since it came out. You know?
Yeah,
like,
and we're getting a show based on it. So why are you going to introduce a new version with like I don't want that. Don't want that at all.
Yeah.
Make something new.
It's pretty silly. However, I will say I would have loved an Uncharted 1 remake, because that game is a little rough around the edges, and if somebody could go back and like bring that up to like Uncharted 4 standards as far as like visuals and gameplay mechanics, and kind of tweak some things, I would take that. I would totally take like an Uncharted 1 remake at this point.
I don't know. It's because to me, because the difference for me is that The Last of Us has a world that you could tell different stories in. Uncharted is very unique, where it's like, this is about Nathan Drake, and it takes place in the real world, but it's about this man who's going on these fantastical Indiana Jones-like adventures, and to say like, here's another guy or lady that goes on Indiana Jones-like adventures, like, well, that's not significant, that's just.
Oh, I mean, like remaking Uncharted 1, like remaking.
Like a remaster remake. Like a Final Fantasy VII HD remake.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
like
I got
from
you.
the ground up, rebuild.
See,
that
that's
game.
that's like these remake, remaster, HD remake, remaster.
Yeah,
it's like,
awful.
yeah, it's like
It's awful.
we needed some clear terminology for this.
Yeah, give us a new word for remasters.
Yeah,
it's silly.
Yeah, it gets jumbled up too much.
Yeah. So anyways, I want to move on. Obviously, like that's such like an information dump, and I hope everybody enjoyed kind of hearing that and didn't fall asleep. I enjoy that kind of stuff.
It's interesting news.
It's one of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's just like you kind of get this peek behind the curtain, and to be honest, like, as much as I love Sony, I think they're going in a weird direction right now. Like, I think management is kind of strange. Like, they're not really doing too much as far as like advertising and social media campaigns and stuff. I mean, if you look at like Microsoft and what they're doing, like they're crushing it over there. Obviously, they're trying to catch up to Sony.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like there's no face of Sony anymore other than Jim Ryan, who's kind of a not like he's kind of like it just sort of seems like a butthole, like
unsavory.
Yeah, it's just like it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, I mean, I've read so many like comment sections where after like Jim Ryan says something and people are just like, honestly, I just don't trust that guy. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like his face or something.
He's a hate the face.
Way he says stuff. Yeah, and it's it's just one of those things where it's. I don't think they have a good face for PlayStation right now,
Yeah.
And it's just I think they're in a weird spot, and I think they're cocky Sony again, and
I think so too.
Sony's been there, Microsoft's been there, Nintendo's been there. Everybody, like,
it's a cycle,
whoever's
dude.
in the lead,
it's always a
quote
cycle.
unquote lead. Yeah, whoever's in the lead sales wise gets so cocky, and then just starts tripping on top of themselves. And I think in about 2-3 years, we're gonna see that we're gonna see Sony trip up real hard, and Microsoft's gonna take the lead, and then we'll kind of get back to old school Sony again once they like in like 6 years when they realize their mistakes. So we'll see. It's very cyclical.
It is,
as far as like that goes. So okay, we're already running so low on time, but damn you, Bloomberg, with your giant articles. But there was a lot there. Thank you, Jason Schreier, for that
for
article.
Sure.
So we probably won't have time for you Nintendo Don't Know Jack, but that's okay, because I want to talk about weird
I
games.
need to redeem myself.
All right, we'll see if we have time. But I want to talk
Sure.
about weird video game consoles, because it's like another thing I love, other than peeks behind the curtains of giant corporations, is just old peripherals, video game consoles that didn't like really hit the mainstream in the way that people wanted, or just like large corporations really doubling down on things they absolutely shouldn't. Like,
Sure.
who was like green lighting this stuff is utterly ridiculous. So I have a weird console I want to tell you about, Hav. I don't know if you looked into the thing I sent you. I hope you actually didn't, so I could just read you this nonsense because it's so ridiculous.
No, I did not.
Maybe you looked at.
I focused on the Bloomberg article.
So let me paint a picture here for you. So in '95, the Saturn came out in Japan, and it didn't sell very well. But despite the fact that it didn't sell very well, there's like 7 versions of the Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
It's utterly insane. Made by JVC and Hitachi and all these people that had parts that were in the Saturn. They basically got the license to develop their own version of the Saturn. And so I want to tell you about the High Saturn. And there's 2 versions of the High Saturn. There's which was made by Hitachi, by the way. So there's the Hitachi High Saturn, and then there's the Hitachi High Saturn Navi. And I want to tell you about the Navi because it's utterly insane. So there's an article I found on nfggames.com. It's an old article, but it's a very old console, so I don't think that matters. But I think it's just like pretty well written. So here we are. I'm just going to jump into this. So, quote, in December 95, about a year after the Saturn launched in Japan, and only a few short months after the Saturn's launch in North America, Hitachi released the single most extreme console the world has ever seen, the High Saturn Navi.
Extreme.
Its feature list was enormous. Slim profile, which, the Saturn's like a little chunky.
Yeah.
This thing's like if you smash the top so it's nice and flat and kind of made each side of it a little smaller. So a slim profile, a car adapter, LCD screen, GPS navigation, karaoke.
Nice.
No console before or since dared dream of including half these features, which is why to this day it is probably the rarest and most expensive post-NES console. In fact, even considering the piles of weird pre-NES hardware, the High Saturn Navi still ranks as one of the most ridiculously expensive and elusive systems you're ever likely to see. As of this writing, which this is in 2003, you can expect to pay over $1,200 US to get one of these in decent shape with a screen, and more if you get one in like new condition with all the boxes and manuals intact.
Wow.
Totally ridiculous. And yet, when the Sega was creating the Saturn system, well, actually, I already kind of went over this a little bit, so I think we can skip forward, which is like the JVC and Hitachi were basically making versions of this. And all 3 manufacturers, Sega, JVC, Hitachi, released older oval button systems and newer round button systems. And none of these are particularly rare. But the Hitachi threw down the gauntlet. It beggars disbelief to this day. The Saturn was only a year old when Hitachi threw out the Sega mold and released a completely redesigned system jam-packed with goodies.
Oh, wow.
It's smaller than your average Saturn, but the same width and length, but almost a third shorter, and it's nearly flat on top. It's considerably heavier because of the added components. Even considering most of the power supply was made external, like just a big old brick. In addition to the standard Saturn ports, it has 2 microphone inputs for karaoke use, a GPS antenna port, video and audio inputs, a TV tuner port, and a line out port. This was all standard equipment on this bad boy. The launch price was 150,000 yen, or about 1,480 US dollars at the time.
Jeez.
At the time, so you got to imagine this is probably like a $3,000 console.
Yeah, it's like a high-end PC.
Yeah. And the price of this system without the screen was more than $1,000 above the price of a normal Saturn.
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Where can I get one?
And then there's also and that's just the system. And then the LCD screen was about $443 in US dollars.
That's like the Apple's new, when like they came out with their new machine, but you had to get like the specific monitor for it, and then the stand for the monitor, which is just almost just as expensive. Like, it was nuts.
Yeah. So I want to skip over a few things here just so we can get through this, but I do want to say, like, so I don't know if you remember, like, in the GameCube days, there was a company that made like portable LCD screens that kind of flipped up and down on like the GameCube and whatnot.
I remember seeing that.
So I actually have one, and it's honestly great. But so this screen's kind of like that, the one that you could buy for this system. So imagine like a screen that kind of stood up on top of a Sega Saturn. And then I really want to read the GPS stuff, if that's all right, if you still have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We'll try and squeeze this in real quick. But it's so ridiculous. So just listen to this nonsense. So a GPS antenna port and a GPS antenna receiver. Remember, this is like 95. Okay.
Yeah.
GPS 95.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay? So a GPS antenna port and a GPS antenna receiver were standard equipment in car navigation systems. In-car navigation systems have been popular in Japan for a very long time, much longer than the U.S. That's just my adding to that. But I'm not sure to whom this particular system seemed a good idea. Installation of the power supply and GPS antenna were semi-permanent, as the former had to be tucked away carefully to avoid unsightly cable dangle.
Oh, no.
And the latter needed to be clipped to the handbrake. When installed, you could use the system like any other navigation. The screen showed your location overlaid on a road map, and you could zoom in or out, add locations, plot routes, and leave quote-unquote breadcrumb trails. No Navi software or boot disk was needed to operate the Navi. You merely turned the system on with any Navican compatible map CD in the drive, and the Navi mode started. Operation was a bit tricky. Unlike a normal Navi system, the High Saturn used a controller on a cord, and since 2 hands were required, it was beyond the driver's ability to manipulate the system while driving.
Yeah.
So imagine in your car in Japan, you have a Sega Saturn with a little LCD screen sitting somewhere, and like you have a bunch of cords dangling, so you have to like kind of tuck that stuff in somewhere so you don't have a bunch of cords dangling. But then you need to navigate.
Yep.
And to navigate, you need to put your hands in the controller so you can like change your route or something. But also, like, it takes 2 hands, so like how are you doing that and driving?
You're not. You're just not.
So just to finish up here, in addition, also, unlike other Navi systems, there was a sensor that needed to be attached to the handbrake cable. Remember, this is Japan, so I'm assuming all their cars are basically like manual, stick shift cars.
Yeah.
So it needed to be attached to the handbrake cable. And if you weren't parked with the handbrake on, there were several functions unavailable to the user, like route planning. Also, game playing was prohibited while the car was in motion. Without the handbrake sensor installed and the handbrake applied, the screen would shut off after a game started to load. If you happen to own one and dare use it in the car, you can bypass this feature by connecting the sensor to anything grounded. So it's like you had this like
I really wonder who did
you had
this.
this like Saturn. Oh, it's like nonsense. It's like who decided this was a good idea? Like, let's take a Sega Saturn,
Put
stick
it in a car.
with a screen. You can't play video games. But also like this thing needs to connect a sensor to your handbrake. If the and you can't use this if the handbrake's on.
Sega,
but
man.
you need 2 hands on the controller. It's like this is Hitachi.
Oh yeah, Hitachi.
Because they designed this version. They just
It's nuts.
like quadrupled down on an already failing system. And they're like, we're making karaoke, we're making navigation, we're gonna have
everything.
It's like, what is going on with this?
I would imagine like it's a hassle as well to take it in and out of your car and hook it up to your brake, or however you're supposed to hook all that up.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine today, like if somebody was like, yo, you can have GPS in your car if you like take your PS5 and you plug it into the cigarette jack, and you take this wire, the sensor, and you run it from the back of your PS5 to your handbrake.
Yeah.
And if your handbrake's up, can't use it. Also, you can't play video games because it's navigated.
And here's
also,
a screen you have to attach to it.
I mean,
it's nuts, dude.
It's utterly insane. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
I mean, I guess technically like Teslas have monitors in there, but like technology now is like it's way different. It's much easier to install stuff like that. But it's nuts to think of like, here's a game system in my car, and here's a screen attached to it, and I'm gonna hook it up to the battery and then to the brake, and then I'm gonna use it to navigate. It's nuts.
Very last thing I'll add to this, then we can get out of here. So they talk about a couple of different things here right at the end. So I'm not certain, quote, I'm not certain the TV tuner was ever released. I've never seen one for sale. If it did reach store shelves, it was in frighteningly limited numbers. The system manual makes reference to this unit as forthcoming, along with the never-released hard drive and the keyboard and floppy drive, which were released much later and not by Hitachi. The High Saturn Navi pad is the same as the other High Saturn systems, which are in turn only cosmetically different than the Sega branded unit. So it's like they had like all these other nonsense things coming. Plus, this thing could play video CDs, which are basically this is something I actually found really interesting when I was researching this. So I guess in a lot of Asian countries with a lot of humidity, VHS's their shelf life was drastically cut short by the humidity. So kind of but even before the DVDs sort of came around, video CDs started to become popular in a lot of Asian countries in replace of like VHS. So you have these companies like Hitachi with the High Saturn, trying to make these it's playable. You could play video CDs in it. So I just thought that was like kind of interesting too. I obviously being from the US, I've never even heard of video CDs. I didn't even know that was like a thing.
Yeah, I was thinking almost like Laserdisc, but I guess not.
No, it's like a regular size CD, and it can fit into into a regular Sega Saturn, but a regular Sega Saturn can't play it. It's got to be like this High Saturn version of the Saturn. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing, but eventually like DVDs, I guess, sort of won out to these video CDs. So I just thought that was like an extra little thing to add on to it. But anyways, we're out of time. I will stump you next week with some you Nintendo don't know jack
for sure.
But I think this is a good show. I think we got some good stuff in.
Absolutely.
Some good conversations. I don't know what Sony's doing. I don't know what Hitachi's doing.
Or what they were doing.
Yeah. Hopefully Sony can find their way again and not go the route of Hitachi. I don't need a PS5 GPS in the car.
Yeah, honestly.
But I think it was fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time. Hope you did. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to this week for this episode. That like I said, it's a little different. Structure was a little different, but I think we found our way. I think we did it.
Faux show.
We did it, baby. Mwah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Remember, you can check us out on the internet. I heard that's a thing now.
Yep, very fancy.
You know,
The place to go to for all your
you
stuff.
can check us out at you can check us out at Go Multiplayer on Instagram, where we have put up some pictures of some manuals. I hope we post some more.
I got a few more I can make pictures of.
Post them, baby.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And then, Hav, where can we find you?
Instagram at loverboy_Hav, JAV.
Nice. And you can find me at ZachMatzGanis. That's ZachMatzGanis. I almost forgot how to spell my own name. And of course, you can find us at patreon.com/multiplayer, where if you're like watching the show, you're in it now. It's like you're 110 minutes in and you're like, oh, baby. No, not 110. An hour and 10 minutes in. You're like, oh, baby. These guys are great. How can I support them? You can find us on Patreon, where you can throw us like $1 or $2 a month. Just helps keep lights on. Helps pay for like our stuff.
Podcast services.
Podcast service. Oh, man, I'm so tired.
I feel you.
Oh, man, but I had fun. I hope everybody else had fun. I just I realized there's a big old box of screws in the video here.
I didn't even notice that. Yeah, I guess so.
I was just like, I just had screws back there. So I was building shells. Check out my my Instagram to find out more.
It blends in really well. I couldn't even tell.
But oh man, Hav, you didn't tell me. I mean to say every week that you can check us out on Wednesdays. That's where we post these shows.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so tired. All right, let's get out of here, Hav. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this week. And remember,
we love you, and you should love you too.
And love everybody else around you.
Yeah.
It's
too much.
It's a big world, but it's also a small world.
Yeah.
It's
too much hate in it. It's filled with love.
Yeah, baby. You go play Dreams, I guess. See y'all next week. Peace. We here at Multiplayer would like to give a huge special thank you to Kevin Hopkins, William Euchre, and the rest of our amazing Patreon community. If you'd like to support our podcast and get a shout out at the end of each show, be sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/multiplayer. See you next time, players. We love ya.